Welcome to Psychedelic Radio. I'm Christina Thomas, and I'm the president and founder of Myself Wellness. With me is Charles Patty, Chief Education Officer and Brand Ambassador. Each week, we'll be pushing boundaries, breaking taboos, and shedding light on the use of psychedelic medicines. We want to share expert knowledge and firsthand accounts with those who have experienced transformative psychic shifts using psychedelics. Thanks for joining with us today. Joining us today is Tom Feegel. Tom is from Beond, the first ever network of psychedelic therapy clinics specializing in ibogaine treatment for addiction and trauma. They have completed treatments in their Mexico-based facility of over 20 clients that have reported success in treating opioid addiction and PTSD, as well as non-therapeutic purposes such as self-improvement, personal, and spiritual growth. Thanks for joining us today, Tom. Thanks for joining us today, Tom.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks for the invitation. It's great to meet you. And it's great to have the opportunity to speak with your listeners and your audience, both live and recorded. So wonderful conversation. And congratulations on your nuptials. How exciting.
Thank you
so much. Appreciate you. And thank you. The feeling's mutual about meeting you and having you on the show with us today. So I guess the big question is what drove you to do what you're doing?
Thanks for the question. Well, look, it's always a few different things. Number one, it's a personal experience. My own recovery after almost 15 years, really seeing the change that came in my life and helping others through 12-step programs and other types of relationships to really understand that everyone should have the opportunity to really overcome chemical dependency. That's just a fundamental experience of my life. When that happened, I was able to, for the first time, really look at trauma and the presence of depression and anxiety and early childhood trauma and its contribution to chemical dependency. So I became very curious about that. In addition, ibogaine specifically saved the life of someone in my family who struggled with opioid addiction, who went to conventional rehabilitation facilities multiple times, did what they said as best they could, and it didn't work sufficiently. And so I was really coming to this opportunity from a personal experience, but as an entrepreneur and a business executive trained in business strategy formulation, I started to wonder, why isn't there a place that people could go that had a holistic approach, had a medically safe, psychotherapeutic, grounded care continuum where people could go and truly use the innovation of psychedelic assisted treatment to change their lives. And I started looking at all the other places that were out there and wondering, what does better look like? Is it partially the medical qualifications? Do they have board certified medical doctors? Do they have addiction medicine trained psychotherapists? Do they have adjunct therapies? Do they have nutrition? Do they have preparation and aftercare? And there wasn't one. There really wasn't one.
You're really speaking my language right now, because
your story, I think, really resonates with us.
I suffered from substance abuse issues, and I was an opioid addict for a lot of years of my life. For over 20 years of my life, I was, in and out of rehab centers and was just wanting to get sober so incredibly badly. But what you said and what I actually preach a lot in my own personal life is I could never get to the underlying issues of why I was self-medicating to begin with. And it was through the use of psychedelic medicines that I actually alleviated all of that out of my life by going and healing the trauma and everything that I needed to work through. And, and that's actually why Christina and I started our company, is because we're really, like, when you were just speaking, I felt it in my heart, because it seems like our visions are just completely aligned.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then So there wasn't one out there. There were some that were clinical, but didn't offer preparation or aftercare. There were some that were clinical and they didn't offer psychotherapy. They were sort of, and their intentions are great. Let's be honest. They're doing it the best that they think they can. And we saw opportunity to first and foremost better understand client needs, and then develop a solution that would satisfy them. And it was in the beginning a bit of an experiment, but the results speak for themselves. And honestly, I personally take everyone back to the airport. We provide ground transportation to and from the airport to ensure safety and so on. I cry every time. The stories that I hear from people who have come in with substance use, depression, anxiety, PTSD, and now more and more, just a desire for a reset of a relationship with some experience, some person, some device, even food, device, inner child. They want to reset the relationship. It works. It really incredibly works. And they tell me the story about what they're going to do now when they go home. What are they going to do for themselves, most importantly? What are they going to do for their family next? What are they going to do for others next? And that is just a extremely satisfying personal experience, which happens in 10 days, not 10 months. It happens.
I totally relate to that.
We're not in a race, but it is miraculous how fast it happens.
And it works. And that's yeah.
I think we need to backtrack a little bit, though. I know we both know what ibogaine is, but for people who don't know, what exactly is ibogaine?
So iboga comes from a natural source, a plant that is cultivated most often in Gabon in West Africa, in certain other countries in that region. The iboga root, the root of that plant is the source of a natural substance called iboga, and it has been used for thousands of years in that region of the world ceremonially. It's a spiritual practice. It's a privilege. It's an honor that's given to the community members who are facing transition in life at different ages and stages of their life. We all know, let's say you're going to get married. There's some stuff that you might want to sort of not bring into that stage of your life, or at least resolve or better understand without re-experiencing, so you're better prepared to deliver on with your whole healed self in that new stage. This has been going on in a spiritual practice and a ceremonial practice for as long as time. Ibogaine is a hydrochloride, is a refined, purified version of that natural substance, which gives the administrator the ability, if they choose to, and we do, to test its purity, to truly understand the dosage accurately with science and medical precision. And so iboga is a natural substance that is often used in a more ceremonial way, and ibogaine is a medicine. They're both plant derived. They're both naturally derived. One is often used in a more ceremonial context and has certain perceived benefits in that context, as distinct from ibogaine. Ibogaine is oftentimes used in a more medicinal, scientific, I would argue precise way, for a different purpose. So I hope that helps answer the question.
It does.
For
So
sure.
when people go to you, is it a pill? Is it a tincture? Is it a tea? What are you serving?
Great question. I didn't even know until I did it myself at Beond, but it's a capsule. It's a powder inside, usually more than one capsule. And it's meticulously measured in its dosage based on a number of factors, both partly physiological, partly scientific, partly medicinal, and then, of course, through experience. Our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jeffrey Camlett, MD, board certified in addiction medicine, has been doing this for over 26 years, for private clients, never in a formal facility, usually at a appropriate facility, but not as an employee. And Dr. Felipe Malacara, our Chief Clinical Officer, has been doing this for over 17 years in a facility, another facility. They've worked together for many years, but never for the same company. And so when Beond formed, we really sought to bring the world's best medical experts together so that they could collaborate and leverage both their experience, their academic and medical qualifications and training for the benefit of our clients. So it's a pill. They know exactly how much and how to qualify and evaluate an individual for their for the likely benefits that will come from ibogaine. But let's be honest and let's be clear. Ibogaine is part of a 5-phase delivery model that is really anchored in the psychotherapeutic model benefits. So we start with preparation remotely before anyone comes here. They're doing a Zoom with a therapist, a therapeutic coach, and the goal of that stage, which usually lasts for weeks, is, do we really understand the whole person yet? Not what are they saying is the chemical dependency, the impact of depression, anxiety, trauma, the desire for a reset, but do we understand their expectations, their fears, their life experience, their relationships, their relationship to self-esteem, et cetera. And then when they arrive, we start with preparation for the treatment. The treatment and the dosage and so on is all about 4 types of safety we can go into, but that's just one phase of 5 that we're working through together. The clients do the work. The plant helps them, and the environment and the professional team around them are facilitating their work.
That's what we always tell our clients too, is that it's a catalyst, and it's a catalyst for change. And you do have to put in the work. The medicine can show you all these things, but if you don't apply what you are learning from the medicines, then, you're doing yourself a disservice.
If nothing changes, nothing changes.
Right. And so aftercare, one of the things that we found in doing a couple years of research and talking to people in the community and practitioners, visiting facilities and meeting, most importantly, the people who had been there. As I said, one of whom was someone in my own family, went to conventional rehab, it didn't work, found an ibogaine facility, the medicine worked, and the environment was woefully inadequate. And one of the things that was lacking was acute aftercare and then long-term aftercare. Really building the roadmap and then supporting the actions that must be taken by that individual and their support network to build that resilience and ensure the enduring benefits of the ibogaine experience.
So I personally quit a 6-year heroin addiction from a DMT experience that I had. And I know that ibogaine is doing amazing things for opioid addictions. I guess my big question for you is, what do you see at your place that you guys are treating more than anything? What's really the thing that's bringing people to seek help from you guys? Or is it just a spectrum of things?
Yes, spectrum, of course, but there's three types of guests. We call you a guest.
Okay.
First and foremost, chemical dependency, and fentanyl has changed the world. Crystal meth has changed the world in radically adverse ways. So there's a group of guests, and we'll call them chemical dependency, depression, anxiety, and trauma. That's 4. We'll put them all with great love and respect into one category for now, because they oftentimes have polysubstance, comorbidity, etc. But let's just talk about those for a second. Fentanyl, opioid addiction, and crystal meth and alcohol kill people the fastest. This is the thing that takes, we say in recovery, takes people down the fastest. And many other substances can have significant adverse impact in your life. These substances tend to accelerate with grave danger. And so these people are coming, of course, and they're seeking interruption of a dependency so that they can really do the work that you talked about doing. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
It's always good to hear that and inspires people in ways that we can't even imagine. I know that feeling. I hope more people have the ability to say that and have that feeling. So chemical dependency, severe depression, severe anxiety, severe trauma. That's one group of people that are coming. And that's really what we thought we were getting the opportunity to help with. It turns out that there's a whole additional group of people who are not quite there yet. It's not the last house on the block, as we say in recovery. They're still gainfully employed, still so-called functional, still have relationships. They still have the ability to envision a future that's better than the experience they're having, but they can't get there. And so they're sort of less severe in the adverse impact of those symptoms. Then there's the group we call Beond reset, where they're like, hey, ibogaine really does give insights. It allows people to reset their relationship, just as I described. But the thing I'm doing it doesn't feel like I'm an addict yet. Phone, food, relationships, self-esteem, inner child work, grief, and loss. So these things are causing great suffering, but this category of guests is not raising their hand and saying, I'm going to die. They're saying something is really causing great suffering and I want to fix it. I personally need help fixing it. We love those people just as much as the others. And then there's 1/3, which is like optimization. They're like, I've done psilocybin. I've done ayahuasca multiple times. It really helped, but I've researched ibogaine and I've always wanted a place where it could be done medically safe in a holistic way with the therapeutic care continuum. And I want to go to the next level. These are CEOs. These are executives. These are athletes. And still they're seeking a place that can show them we can do it medically, scientifically, ethically, holistically, but they're not an addict and they're not really having this adverse impact, but they have an aspiration for optimization. We love them as much as the other two as well.
Amazing. That's really, really cool. I always kind of just thought of it as like the last resort. So that's really nice to have a different light shed on that. So talk to us about how many times when they're with you, are they getting the medicine? How long is the experience? What is all of that like?
Well, I'll take that in a couple of different ways. I can tell you about my experience, which was, long after I was free from chemical dependency. I went through the whole process with just like a guest would. Set the personal psychedelic agenda, really was invited strongly facilitated, encouraged to articulate what is safety, what is psychological safety. Do you understand what's going on in my mind? What's emotional safety? Do you understand what I'm feeling? Sometimes one might have anxiety, and we want to help. We want to hold that and resolve that before you are in your treatment. Spiritual safety. Do you empathize with my own personal spiritual practice or lack thereof? Don't want to force anything. Definitely want to cultivate any signals of that. And then third, of course, physical medical safety. It lasted for about 12 hours.
Wow.
12 hours. That seemed like about 2 hours, maybe a little bit less. During the treatment, there's noise canceling headphones. You're in a room that looks like a really sophisticated ICU, but it's designed to be warm and peaceful and enveloping and embracing. Same technologies as you would find in Miami or New York and LA or anywhere else, exactly the same, but it looks like a place you'd want to have a psychedelic assisted experience in. With a nurse, with a psychologist present for 12 hours. Very comfortable, eye mask on, noise canceling headphones, a custom playlist, which is developed with the therapist before a few days before your treatment, because oftentimes you might say, hey, I'm really into this type of music, but we need to talk about it because this is a journey and we want to be with the music, the rhythms, the sounds to be supportive. And so we do that together with the therapist. Then, so for about 6 hours of that 12-hour journey, it's a very visually dynamic, sometimes intense experience. It's not scary. It's not a flood of images. It's more like watching a movie of your past experience in life. Remember that time, that time. Remember that incident, without any attachment of the ego. But, I call, it's only my reference, I call ibogaine the intellectual psychedelic because, a lot of people who have suffered for a long time, we're very resilient, we're very creative, we're very, we figure stuff out. And this helps us look at those experiences of life with that curiosity, without being wounded again or without being impacted adversely again. And then there's another 6 hours, which is a very introspective experience where we're connecting a lot of dots. We're really understanding deeply those insights, but we're not trying to do anything yet. We're just experiencing, what does that mean? And the interesting thing is, if we sit here today and we try to remember those times that mattered, even if we work really hard, we may get to a bunch of them. But what we don't know is what we don't know. So we can't go back to those ones we can't remember for whatever reason. ibogaine shows us those.
It's funny because I was actually just recently talking to a friend of mine that works with ibogaine, and I was explaining the psychedelic ketamine therapy that we do at our facility because we actually do psychedelic dosing and we do mostly intramuscular shots. And when I was explaining it to her, she said, that really sounds like ibogaine to me. And it's funny because the fact, like everything that you just said really sounded like a psychedelic dose of ketamine to me. And one thing I really want our audience to know, and I love that you touched on this, is that you have these different spectrums of your guests that you work with, where you might have these people that are in crisis, where they are in a full-blown addictive state. But one thing that we preach here is that by no means should this be a last resort for people. I think
we hope you don't have to get there.
No, exactly. And, and there's a lot of medical professionals out there, even in the ketamine field, that were like, oh, you need to be on a string of antidepressants and you need to be on this and this medication before you're even a candidate for ketamine therapy. And it's like, Why would you say that? We're getting people off pharmaceutical meds at our facility. We're a holistic wellness center that uses ketamine therapy to get people there. So I think it's really important for people out there to know that this doesn't need to be something that you need to be suicidal or ready to, going through these complete crisis states of depression and anxiety, or in these substance abuse states where this is your last resort. We can take these medicines and nip it in the bud far long before it ever gets there.
Yes, I love that perspective. And you're totally agree that we really hope that someone doesn't have to get to the state where a state of mind, state of physiology, where it is truly a crisis with no alternatives. Not that we don't want to help, but because we think that this is a journey. We think that there's an opportunity to reset, to change, and then to build and grow. And Christina, there was one other part of your question, which was awesome, which is, how often, how does it go? There is no cookie cutter. Of course, every person, we treat people. We don't treat the problem. So we've learned over thousands of successful treatment that by our team and our staff, our nurses, every staff member is invited to have the ibogaine experience in their facility. Every one of them, and every one of them goes through the entire insight-oriented ibogaine delivery model and the care continuum. It's not just, we've got capacity, we'll squeeze you in. They stay on site. They have their own private room. They join the community of guests, and they go through the process, so that when somebody says to you as a guest, to them, what's it going to be like? They can say, well, I can only tell you about my experience. And I had it here. So
we're huge believers in that too. Everybody that we work with has done ketamine and other psychedelics before, because how can you really relate to this experience that people are going through if you can't relate to it? It doesn't give you you don't have that sense of comfort and that sense of it's all going to be okay because they did it too.
And we really specialize. I tell people there is no box, like this proverbial box that they're trying to place people in, where you need to use some sort of homogenized protocol for every single individual. I love how you guys are tailoring it per individual, because if psychedelic medicine's ever taught me everything, it's that the box doesn't exist.
Right. I mean, you learn a lot over thousands of treatments with different symptoms being presented. So of course, some people need what we call a primary dosage of ibogaine, sometimes colloquially called a flood dose. And then some people may need additional supplementary doses while they're in our care, while they're being medically, psychotherapeutically supervised with the same EKGs, with the same fluids, etc. So we have a sense of what we're going to need to do together based on your symptoms presented, but there's no cookie cutter. This isn't a recipe. But we really, and here's one last innovation, is when we looked at everybody out there, what they said was, oh, it's X dollars per day. And we were like, wait, so that's a really interesting way of thinking about it, because it's not a hotel, but it has it could feel, and we try to feel like the warmest, cleanest, most holistic, modern place you could be to do this. It's beautiful, really beautiful. But if you say it's a certain amount per day, guess what it does? It seems simple, like, oh, I can do the math. People start to think like, if I leave early, I'm going to save money. And we want them to focus on the healing. And so, of course, we do our best to calculate exactly the length of time, but we never tell someone you have to leave before you're ready. And ironically, no one ever wants to stay longer than they need to. They're
Wow.
like, I'm ready to go home. I want to go home. I want to get back to life and work and my people, my passion. And they're like, this place is awesome. I love you guys. The food is great. The room is great. The pool is great. The gardens are great. But I got to go. And it's usually about the right time.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Well, I want to thank, that's all the time that we have for today. And I want to thank you so much for joining us and really educating us about your treatment and what you're able to provide. I'm really impressed by you and your presentation. And, there's just so much alignment in what you are doing and what we are doing. And I want to thank you for the work that you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you for your service to humanity. It's a beautiful thing.
First of all, thank you guys for the invitation to participate. It's an honor and a privilege to do this work and to share it with you and your audience. As I said, it comes from a personal experience. If the place that the person in my family had gone was Beond, that could be found at beond.us. It's not an accent, Beyond Us. Beyond Us is the benefits that we seek to deliver. We wouldn't exist. We would be sending people there. We're really, really committed to the outcomes that result from the medical psychotherapeutic delivery model, which leverages the innovation of ibogaine. It's wonderful to witness. It really is every time.
I love it.
You guys are great. It's so fun to be with you.
Thank you. Feelings mutual.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
And my email is tom@beond.us. Please reach out anytime if I can be of service in any way.
Thank you.
For sure.
You as well.
Thank you.
And I want to say thank you to all of the listeners for joining us today on this edition of Psychedelic Radio. You can download past episodes of our program by going to cannabisradio.com or subscribing to our show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. To learn more about psychedelic ketamine therapy, please visit our website, myselfwellness.center. And thank you for joining us today. If nobody's told you that they love you lately?
We do.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.